My name is Nathan Reed, and I'm 34 years old. Last Friday, I got a text from my younger brother Caleb. It said, "Hey bro, just a heads up. You don't need to worry about attending the wedding. It's gonna be small and formal, just close friends and family. No hard feelings." I stared at the message for a full minute, thinking it had to be some kind of joke. I'd paid for that wedding. Every last dollar. The venue deposit, the catering, the live band they just had to have. Even the custom floral arrangements Caleb's fiancée picked from some influencer's Instagram. I never offered, by the way. But when Mom called me crying about how our family deserves a beautiful celebration, I caved. I always did. So imagine reading that I wasn't even welcome. No hard feelings. I called Caleb, straight to voicemail. I called again, still nothing. My chest tightened, hands shaking as I set the phone down. This couldn't be real. Not after I'd emptied my savings for this elegant affair. I called my mother. She answered on the second ring with the kind of cheerful tone that felt like a slap in the face. "Oh, sweetheart, I was just thinking about you." I kept my voice steady. "Mom, what's going on with Caleb's wedding?" There was a pause. Then a sigh. "Oh, honey, don't be upset. It's just that Caleb and Jordan want a very curated guest list. You know, elegant, intimate." "I paid for the whole thing," I interrupted. "I know," she said gently, "and we're so grateful, really. But it's not personal." "Not personal?" My voice cracked. "You're telling me I'm not invited to the wedding I paid for because I'm not, polished enough?" She clicked her tongue. "You work so much, Nathan, and Jordan's family, they have a certain image. It's not about you, it's just you wouldn't really fit in with their vibe." I hung up. For a while, I sat in silence, my thoughts running wild. I'd always been the responsible one, the dependable one. Caleb was the charming screw-up with a million excuses and no consequences. He was the golden child. I was the ATM. And this was my reward. My life has always been built on sacrifice. Ever since we were kids, Caleb was the one who got away with everything. When he broke our neighbor's window playing baseball, I was the one who got grounded because I should have been watching him. When he crashed Dad's old truck into a mailbox, I paid for the repairs. Mom said it was because I had the better job. Because I could afford to help. I was 23 when Dad lost his job, and Mom needed surgery. I picked up extra shifts and covered the bills. When Caleb dropped out of community college to find himself, I was the one who gave him a place to crash. "You're his older brother," my parents always said. "He needs your support." Support, that's what they called it. I didn't say no. Not even when Caleb spent 2 years living rent-free in my apartment, eating my groceries and partying while I barely scraped by. Not even when he asked for money to invest in a business idea that turned out to be a failed pyramid scheme. I always told myself it was temporary, that one day he'd grow up and repay me with something more than empty promises. Then came the wedding. Caleb proposed to Jordan after 6 months of dating. My parents were over the moon. Finally, my mother gushed. "He's turning his life around." They talked about destination weddings, Pinterest boards, and engraved invitations. I stayed quiet until the day Caleb called, his voice nervous. "Hey Nate, so, we're kind of tight on cash right now, and Mom said you might be able to help." "Help with what?" I asked. "Just like the basics. Venue deposit, food. Jordan's family's paying for the dress and photography, so it's not everything. But you know how it is. Family steps up, right?" I should have said no. Instead, I dipped into my savings, canceled my summer vacation, and wired the money. And now I wasn't even on the guest list. The next morning, I couldn't sleep. I paced my apartment, seething. The betrayal didn't just sting, it scorched. I had always been there for them, always. And the moment I wasn't needed, I was discarded. I checked social media. Jordan had posted a countdown. 4 days until I marry my best friend. Reed Wedding 2025, elegant affair. Scrolling through her feed, I saw pictures of the venue I'd paid for. A mountain lodge overlooking Lake Arrowhead. I'd never even been there, but I could see Caleb in one of the photos, holding up a champagne glass next to Jordan and her family, beaming. No mention of me. No thanks. No thanks. No acknowledgement. I was being erased. That night I poured myself a drink, stared at my empty bank account, and made a decision. I wasn't going to beg for an invitation. I wasn't going to yell or threaten. I was going to let them have their wedding, and then I was going to burn the bridge they'd just walked across, so they'd never be able to come back. Not when the money ran out. Not when Caleb's charm failed again. Not when they needed the responsible brother to bail them out one more time. This was the last favor they'd ever get from me. Because sometimes the only way to break free from being used is to stop explaining yourself and start saying no. And I was finally ready to do just that. 2 days after I got cut from my brother's wedding, I showed up at work with barely any sleep and a storm in my chest. My coworkers must have noticed something was off. I wasn't my usual self. I barely spoke, kept my headphones on, and ignored every invitation to lunch. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the thought that kept repeating in my head. They used me. For days, I went through the motions, clocking in and out like a ghost. Then Saturday arrived. The wedding day. I didn't need a calendar to remind me. Social media exploded with photos, hashtags, heart emojis, drone shots of the ceremony I'd paid for. Caleb in a custom tuxedo I'd unknowingly purchased, holding hands with Jordan beneath the very arch I'd funded. My stomach turned as I swiped through the pictures. There they were, my parents smiling like proud royalty. Caleb and Jordan dancing. Champagne toasts. I kept scrolling, praying I wouldn't find what I knew was coming. Then I did. A caption from Jordan's maid of honor. Such a beautiful day. Couldn't have happened without Jordan's family pulling it all together. Fairy tale wedding, family love. Jordan's family. That's who got the credit. Not me. Not a mention of the guy who drained his savings account to make their fantasy possible. I slammed my phone down, heart pounding. I should have been furious, but I wasn't. I was numb. They hadn't just erased me. They'd rewritten me out of the story. That night, I sat alone in my apartment and opened the notebook where I usually scribbled work notes. But instead of to-do lists, I wrote a letter. Not one to send, but one I needed to write for me. Dear Caleb, you probably won't read this. You wouldn't understand it if you did. But I'm writing it anyway, because I need to say it. To someone, to no one, to myself. Do you remember when we were kids and Mom made me give you my birthday gift because you cried that yours wasn't as cool? I told myself back then, that's what big brothers do, and I believed it. Every time you screwed up and I cleaned up the mess, I believed it. Every loan, every sacrifice, every just until I get back on my feet, I believed that family meant never saying no. Until now, until you uninvited me from your wedding like I was some disposable extra. I was never your brother in that story, was I? I was the wallet, the safety net, the fool. But not anymore. So here's my wedding gift to you, Caleb. Nothing. Not forgiveness, not another dime, not even a reply. Good luck. Nate, writing it didn't bring peace, but it helped me breathe. Still, I wasn't done. The next morning, I pulled out every receipt, invoice, and payment confirmation. I made a spreadsheet of every dollar I had spent on that wedding. $28,437.86. That's what I gave to my family. I printed it out. That evening, I mailed it to my parents' house. No note, no explanation. Just cold, hard numbers. Let them see the cost of their betrayal in black and white. A week passed in silence. No one called. Not Caleb. Not Mom. Not Dad. Then one morning, I came home from work to find a letter taped to my apartment door. It wasn't from my brother, it was from my mother. It read, Nathan, I don't know why you're making this into something ugly. We love you. We always have. But sometimes we have to make decisions that are best for the whole family. Caleb's wedding was beautiful, and he deserved that happiness. You'll understand one day when it's your turn. Please don't throw everything away over one misunderstanding. Love, Mom. I stared at the note for a long time, then crumpled it and tossed it in the trash. A misunderstanding? Was that what this was now? I was tired of being the only one who saw the problem. So I did the one thing they never expected. I went quiet. I blocked their numbers, deleted the group chat, turned off the part of my heart that still wanted to believe they cared. And I started focusing on myself. For the first time in my adult life, I made a budget that didn't include emergency money for Caleb. I started taking yoga classes. I reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in years, because I'd always been too busy. I stopped waiting for apologies that were never coming, and slowly, very slowly, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. Until 3 weeks later, when the freedom cracked. It was a Saturday morning when the building's security called me. Mr. Reed, the guard said, your mother is downstairs. She's insisting on seeing you. I closed my eyes, the peace I'd built in the past few weeks shattering. Tell her I'm not available, I said. There was a pause. She says it's urgent, that something's happened. I sighed. Fine, let her up. A few minutes later, I heard a knock. When I opened the door, Mom was standing there, tears streaming down her face. Caleb's in trouble, she said. I didn't speak. She held up a phone. He lost his job. They're behind on rent. Jordan's pregnant. They have nowhere to go. I kept staring. We were hoping, she whispered, maybe just for a few months. There it was. Not we're sorry. Not we made a mistake. Not we hurt you. Just another request. Just another emergency. And I felt it again, the shift. The part of me that used to cave, the good son, the responsible one, he was gone now. I stepped back and said the words I never thought I'd say. Not my problem. Mom blinked. Nathan, I didn't slam the door. I just closed it. Quietly. Finally. And this time, it stayed shut. 3 weeks passed. No calls. No texts. No desperate knocks on my door. Just silence. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel responsible for anyone but myself. And it was terrifying. And peaceful. Every time I opened my bank app and saw money sitting there that wasn't draining into someone else's problems, I smiled. I started sleeping better. Eating better. I even signed up for a weekend photography class, something I'd always wanted to do but never made time for. Then the silence broke. It was a Monday morning. I was on my way out, coffee in hand, when I found a thick envelope wedged under my door. No name, no return address, just my apartment number written in stiff, familiar handwriting. Inside was a letter. Handwritten, from Caleb. Mate, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I can't say I blame you. But I wanted to explain, not to excuse, just to give you the truth. Jordan left me 2 weeks ago. She said I was too entitled. Too dependent. Said I needed to grow up and stop leaning on other people to fix everything for me. She was right. I know what we did was wrong. I was selfish. I didn't fight to include you in the wedding because it was easier not to. I thought if I ignored how unfair it was, it would just go away. And when you finally stood up for yourself, I didn't know how to handle that. But you were right. I used you. We all did. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know. I'm sorry. For real this time. The letter ended there. No ask, no manipulation, just those words. I didn't know what to feel. I sat down, reread it. Twice. Part of me wanted to crumple it up and throw it in the trash. Another part, some stubborn, broken part, held on to it like it meant something. But I wasn't ready to reply. Not yet. That night, I pulled out my old laptop and opened a blank document. I didn't know what I was writing at first, just that I needed to get it out. Everything I'd swallowed for years, how it felt to always be second place in my own family. How I'd been guilt-tripped into becoming their emergency fund, therapist, wedding planner, and fixer. How none of it was ever enough. By the time I finished, I had 10 pages of raw, messy truth. It wasn't for them. It was for me. And in writing it, I realized something. Caleb might have been the face of the betrayal, but the rot went deeper. My parents. They had orchestrated it all from the beginning. They raised me to be responsible, not out of love, but out of utility. I was their investment, their fallback, their favorite tool, and when that tool stopped working for them, they tossed it aside. The next day, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. But something told me I should. Hello? I said cautiously. Mr. Reed? This is Lauren Hunt from Perry & Banks Law Firm. Your parents listed you as an emergency contact. I froze. What's this about? There's been an incident involving your father. He collapsed at work this morning. We've been trying to reach next of kin. I blinked. Wait, why a law firm? She hesitated. Your father collapsed during a deposition. He was being sued for breach of contract and fraud. My heart dropped. I got the address and rushed over, not because I wanted to help, but because I needed to know what else they were hiding. When I arrived at the downtown office, Dad was slumped in a chair in the hallway, pale and sweating. My mother sat beside him, clutching his hand and crying softly. She looked up when she saw me like a drowning woman spotting a lifeboat. Nate, she whispered. Thank God you're here. I didn't hug her. I didn't ask if she was okay. I just said, what's going on? The truth poured out faster than I expected. Dad had taken out loans in my name. Not just once, multiple times over the past 5 years. He'd used my credit, my identity, even my tax returns. At first it was, just until things pick up. Then it became, we'll pay it back later. And now, The debt had snowballed into over $80,000. My knees buckled. I leaned against the wall to keep from collapsing. "You stole my identity?" I said, my voice shaking. Mom reached for my hand. "Sweetheart, we were desperate. We never thought it would get this far." I pulled my hand away like she'd burned me. Dad looked up, barely able to speak. I didn't want this. I was going to fix it." I stared at them both, these people I had trusted, loved, sacrificed for. And all I saw were strangers. "You didn't want this," I said coldly, "but you let it happen. You let me pay for everything. You let Caleb use me. And now you're telling me you used my name to cover your mess?" Mom cried harder. "We didn't know what else to do." I stood up straight, my voice like steel. "You could have asked. You could have told me the truth. You could have chosen me, just once, instead of using me." No one said a word. I took a step back. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "You're going to confess, you're going to tell the bank and the credit agencies exactly what you did, and you're going to remove my name from everything. If you don't, I'll press charges." "Nate, please," Mom whispered. "No more chances," I said, and I walked out. That night I filed an identity theft report. My lawyer started gathering documentation. I froze my credit, canceled cards, changed every password. It felt like cutting out infected tissue, painful but necessary. And through it all, I didn't cry. Not once. I was past grief. I was building a wall, one they would never climb again. It's funny how silence feels different after betrayal. Before, it used to ache. Now, it felt earned, like armor forged through fire. It had been 2 weeks since I discovered my parents had stolen my identity and drained my credit. 2 weeks since I walked out of that law firm, leaving my mother sobbing and my father crumbling in a chair. I hadn't answered a single call or message since. Instead, I was focused on fixing what they broke. I spent my mornings meeting with my attorney, gathering documents, filing reports. My credit was frozen, new accounts were secured, and every transaction tied to my name was under a microscope. My lawyer, a woman named Sydney with nerves of steel, was relentless. "They thought you wouldn't fight back," she said one day, flipping through a stack of paperwork. "Now they'll learn." I wasn't just fighting for financial freedom. I was reclaiming every part of myself they'd taken. Then one day, I got a notification. A formal complaint had been filed against me. Max had submitted a counterclaim, accusing me of slander, emotional distress, and harassment. I laughed. Actually laughed. The same guy who stole my money, locked me out of his wedding, and let our parents use my name for illegal loans, was now playing victim? Classic. My lawyer wasn't surprised. "This is a tactic," Sydney said, calmly sipping her black coffee. "He's trying to pressure you into backing down, but it won't work. We'll file a response, and we'll win." Still, part of me felt sick. I kept thinking about the years I spent cleaning up Max's messes, from his unpaid rent to his DUI. The sleepless nights, the jobs I passed up, the relationships I sacrificed because someone in the family always needed me. And now, here I was, being dragged to court by my own brother. The hearing was scheduled 2 weeks later, a simple preliminary session to review the counterclaims. But nothing about it felt simple. As I walked into the courthouse that morning, dressed in a navy blazer and holding a thick folder of documentation, I caught my reflection in the glass door. I didn't look like the broken, betrayed brother anymore. I looked like a man ready to fight. Inside, Max was already seated with his lawyer. He didn't look at me, just tapped his foot and whispered to his attorney like this was some minor inconvenience. My parents weren't there. Cowards. When the judge entered, the room quieted instantly. The hearing began and Max's lawyer went first, rambling about emotional damage, public humiliation, and how I'd turned a family disagreement into a public vendetta. Then it was Sydney's turn. She stood calmly, flipped open her binder, and said, "Your Honor, my client was defrauded by his family. We have documented identity theft, unauthorized bank withdrawals, and evidence of financial abuse going back years. These are not accusations, they are facts." She handed the judge a thick folder. "He's not pursuing vengeance," she added, "he's pursuing justice." The judge scanned the documents, his brows slowly raising. "Mr. Reed," he said, looking at Max, "these are serious claims. Do you have any evidence to refute them?" Max squirmed. "It was just a misunderstanding. We thought Nate was okay with it. He always helped before." The judge raised an eyebrow. "So you assumed continued consent to access his finances without permission? That's not how consent works." Max opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The judge dismissed the counterclaim as baseless. But he didn't stop there. He turned to Max's lawyer. You may want to advise your client that filing frivolous lawsuits in response to legitimate fraud claims may open him up to additional penalties. Sydney smiled. I exhaled for the first time all morning. Outside the courtroom, Max finally looked at me. You think you won? He said bitterly. No, I said. I know I did. He scoffed. You'll be back. You always come back. Not this time, I said, walking past him. You burned the last bridge. The fallout hit fast. My parents' assets were frozen pending investigation. The bank flagged multiple fraudulent transactions. And Max, he lost everything he'd been gifted. The wedding fund, the leased car, the co-signed apartment. Word spread quickly. Cousins stopped calling. Old family friends reached out, apologizing for ever believing Max's version of the story. Even my aunt, Dad's sister, sent me a message. I had no idea. I'm so sorry, Nate. I always thought you were the lucky one. Lucky? I'd spent my entire life being drained by the people who were supposed to love me. But now, finally, I was rebuilding. I got a raise at work. My weekends were mine again, filled with real joy, not obligations. I started therapy. For the first time, I could admit out loud that my family had been emotionally abusive. And it wasn't my fault. I didn't owe them my life. One night, I sat on my apartment balcony, looking out at the city lights, when a message came through. It was from my mother. Your father's not well. He's asking for you. Please don't let this be how it ends. I stared at the screen for a long time. Once, that message would have shattered me. I would have rushed over, heart pounding, wallet open, ready to save the day. Now I understood. This wasn't about reconciliation, it was about control, and I wasn't theirs to control anymore. I put my phone down, and I breathed. I didn't reply to Mom's message. For the first time in my life, I didn't jump into action, didn't call back, didn't worry about how guilty I'd feel later. I just sat with it, let the silence speak louder than their desperation. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. A week later, I got an official letter in the mail. It wasn't from my parents or Max. It was from their lawyer. They were contesting the court's ruling. They claimed I had manipulated the judge with emotional bias, that I was exaggerating my role in the financial arrangements. I could hardly believe it. They weren't just refusing to admit what they did. They were doubling down. My stomach twisted into knots as I handed the envelope to Sydney. She skimmed through it calmly, then looked at me. They're bleeding. And when people like that bleed, they get reckless. I sighed. I thought winning in court would be the end of it. It's never the end when people like your brother feel entitled to what you've built, she said. They think you owe them. That word again, owe. I didn't owe them anything. Not after all the years I carried them on my back. Still, the anxiety crept in like poison. I started double-checking the locks on my doors. I changed my passwords. I pulled my credit report every week. It felt like I was constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for them to strike again. And then, they disappeared. 3 weeks passed. No calls, no letters, no surprise court filings. It was almost too quiet. Until one morning, I opened my email and found something I never expected. Subject: for Max, no lawyers. This time, Nate, I know you hate me. I don't blame you. I screwed up. We all did, but Dad's health is getting worse and Mom can't handle it alone. I'm not asking you to forgive us, I'm just asking you to come home, just once. No expectations, no tricks, just one visit. That's all. Max, I stared at the screen, numb. For a split second, I felt that old pull, the urge to fix things, to be the better person, to show up even when no one showed up for me. But it wasn't just guilt I felt, it was something colder, sharper, suspicion. I forwarded the email to Sydney. Her reply came back in minutes. You're under no legal obligation to go. But if you do, don't go alone, and don't go unprepared. I didn't want to go. But something inside me needed to see them. Needed to see with my own eyes whether this was real or just another manipulation. The house looked different. Not worse, not better. Just smaller. Like the years had shrunk it, taken away the shine and grandeur it once had in my memory. I parked across the street, just in case I needed to leave fast. Max opened the door before I could knock. He looked rough, hollow-eyed, underweight, like stress had finally caught up to him. Thanks for coming, he said quietly. I didn't answer. I walked inside. The air felt heavy. The pictures on the walls were the same ones from years ago, me and Max at the lake, birthdays, graduations, smiles that didn't mean what I once thought they did. Mom was in the kitchen, making tea like it was any normal afternoon. She looked older, more fragile. But when her eyes met mine, there was still that flicker of calculation behind them. "Nate," she said, her voice soft. "You look good." I stayed silent. Then I saw him, Dad, sitting in his recliner by the window. He looked broken, not just by illness, but by time. His face was slack on one side, his eyes unfocused. "Does he know I'm here?" I asked. Mom hesitated. Some days are better than others. I stood there for a moment, unsure of what I was supposed to feel. Anger? Pity? Nothing? I didn't even know this version of my father. He was a ghost of the man who once told me I was too difficult to invite to a wedding I paid for. Max motioned for me to sit. "We didn't bring you here to fight," he said. "We just thought maybe it was time to let the past go." I raised an eyebrow. "Let it go?" He nodded. "We all made mistakes." "Mistakes?" I repeated. "You stole from me. Mom and Dad helped, and now you're sitting here asking me to forget it?" "No," he said, shaking his head. "We're asking you to understand. We were scared. We didn't know how to fix everything. So we panicked." I let out a hollow laugh. "You didn't panic. You planned. You filed claims against me. You tried to destroy me in court." He swallowed hard. "And we lost. You were right, okay? We were wrong, but now Dad's dying and none of it matters anymore." But it did matter. Every sleepless night, every dollar, every piece of trust they shattered like glass underfoot. It all still mattered. I stood up. "I came because I needed to see it for myself," I said. "I needed to know if you'd changed." Max stared at me, desperate. And I see exactly what I expected," I said, voice steady. "A family that only reaches out when they're losing something. A family that only values me when I'm useful." I turned to my mother. "You don't miss me. You miss what I used to give you." She opened her mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. "Don't. You had your chances. All of you did." And then, with a calm I didn't know I had, I walked out. Night, I slept peacefully for the first time in months. No weight on my chest. No guilt clawing at the corners of my mind. I had looked them in the eyes and said no. And that, more than any courtroom victory, was the moment I won. A month passed. No texts, no calls, no surprise letters or guilt-laced pleas. Just silence. And for the first time, silence didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like peace. I'd returned to my routine, refocused on my life. I started therapy, picked up weightlifting again. Even booked a long-overdue weekend trip to Colorado, something I used to only dream of when every spare dollar was funneled into someone else's needs. But even in peace, some wounds don't close easily. One afternoon, Sydney came by to check in. We sat on my balcony, coffee cups steaming in our hands, city lights blinking in the distance. She glanced at me. "So, is it over?" I thought about it. About Dad's vacant eyes, Max's desperate voice, my mother's cold calculation wrapped in soft words. "No," I said finally, "but I am." Sydney nodded like she understood exactly what I meant. They might try again, maybe next week, maybe next year. But whatever they came back for, they wouldn't find the same Nate. That version, the one who bent over backwards, wrote blank checks, begged for scraps of approval, he was gone. I had buried him, quietly, beneath the life I was finally building for myself. Still, I knew there would be one final message. There always was. Some last attempt to pull me back into the chaos. It came on a rainy Sunday evening. I was sorting laundry when I saw the envelope slipped beneath my apartment door. No postage, no return address, just my name, in Max's handwriting. Inside was a single-page letter. "Nate, Dad passed away last night. We held a small service, just family. I didn't tell you because I knew you wouldn't come, but I thought you deserved to know. I'm not writing for money, I swear. There's nothing left to ask for anyway. Just wanted to say maybe it doesn't matter anymore. Maybe we're too far gone, but I am sorry for everything." Max, I read it once, twice. Then folded it neatly and placed it back in the envelope. There were no tears, no anger, no sense of loss. The man Max wrote about had died long before last night. The man who stood by while his son was drained of time, money, and love without so much as a thank you. That man wasn't someone I could mourn. Still, something inside me shifted. Not forgiveness, not closure, just acceptance. This was how it ended, not with shouting or courtrooms or threats, but with a simple letter and a choice. Did I respond, or did I let the silence continue to speak? I didn't reply. Instead, I wrote something else. A resignation letter. Not from a job, but from a role I had never asked to play. The family savior, the fixer, the background character in someone else's spotlight. I was done. 6 months later, I opened my own consulting agency. Small at first, just me and a desk in a shared office space, but mine. Fully mine. I poured my energy into it, the same way I used to pour it into them. And guess what? It worked. Clients came. Projects grew. I hired an assistant, then a second consultant. Before long, I had a waiting list. I kept my boundaries clear. My mornings started with peace, not panic. I had weekends free to hike, read, volunteer, and every time doubt crept in, every time that little voice whispered, maybe you were too harsh, too cold, I walked to the bookshelf in my home office. On it sat a frame. Inside wasn't a family photo or a diploma. It was a printout of Max's original text. Hey man, just wanted to let you know, don't worry about coming to the wedding. It's mostly a formal event, and we're keeping the guest list tight. No hard feelings, okay? I had highlighted the words, don't worry about coming, because that was the moment they set me free. I just hadn't realized it yet. People ask me sometimes if I ever reconnected with them, if I forgave them, if I regret cutting them off. Here's the truth. I don't wish them harm. I hope they learned something. I hope Max grew up. I hope Mom found something to care about besides appearances. I even hope that, wherever he is, Dad found some peace. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And growth doesn't require returning to the place that hurt you. So, no, I never called back, never visited the gravesite, never sent a reply. Not out of spite, but because I had finally learned the lesson they never wanted me to understand. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away and never look back. They expected me to stay broken, loyal, forever indebted to the family that drained me dry. But instead, I built something better. And now, I wake up every day with one simple truth. Peace is the loudest form of revenge.